Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is David Hawkins, and he is the herb doc in Parkersburg, West Virginia at Mother Earth Foods, where my husband got his dandelion tincture, dandelion root tincture that, as far as we can see, cured his cancer. Um, so, Dave, where do you want to start with this?
Well, I love it. I love when you reached out to us, and started telling me your story because, I've been in business for almost, well, over 50 years, literally, and I've been a practicing clinical herbalist for probably close to 35 to 40 years. So, you know, I've worked with a lot of health concerns that people have, and cancer was one of the specialties that I kind of wanted to. I've spent many, many, many years studying, and it's the first time that I had seen what you were explaining to me in the original conversation about Jim's colon cancer and how the simple extract of dandelion root was so beneficial. And I thought to myself, well, now that's interesting because you don't see dandelion root in a lot of the plant-based materials when you start to deal with cancer and cytotoxicity and things of that nature. So I was quite fascinated that it actually enticed me to go out to the NIH PubMed, and I started typing in dandelion root and colon cancer, and it popped up the studies with Dr. Pandy. And I read that pretty intently to kind of get a little bit more depth of understanding. And I just found that to be very fascinating. And I thought that it was good information. And of course, there's a lot goes on in cancer. So it's just one of the arms of how we address, the manners of how cancer exists and grows in the human body. So I think that it was quite exciting, and I appreciate you sending me over the interview with Dr. Pandy. I was in the process while I was working at my desk of listening to that interview. So,
Okay.
so that's how it all kind of got started. Just for your audience, it's a very it's unique. And I'm curious to hear the rest of the interview with Dr. Pandy because I understand some of the difficulties they've been having in trying to move forward, even potentially more research, but even letting people use this as a possibility to help in their cancer. So,
Yes, he's very interested in talking to you and learning more about, is it called Factory that's in New Mexico? Or what is that
It's
called?
it's a company. Yeah, that's where it's manufactured is in New Mexico. Yes, I have a contractual arrangement with a company there who's a very good friend of mine, a man by the name of Mitch Coben, and his company actually manufactures a lot of extracts that are sold all over the United States.
Okay.
And the reason I like that company is because they have a very high quality control. And we need to have quality control when it comes to plant-based materials because a medicine's only as good as its starting material, and that means where's it come from, what's been done to it, how is it processed, and the beautiful thing about dandelion root though is that my gosh, the traditional uses of dandelion go hundreds of years, probably maybe thousands of years in use. And it's just a simple, common weed in almost everybody's yard that you can dig that root up. It's great for digestion, it's good for kidney health, but who thought that it might have benefits in the more specifics of the cancer realm, and specific to the types of colon cancer, and that's just it, there needs to be more research really done on it. And that's
Yeah.
the hard thing is it's hard to get research on plant material.
Yeah. And
It
Dr.
just is.
Pandy
It
said
doesn't
he's
make
been
big bucks.
research. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Dr. Pandy, I believe he said he's been researching the dandelion root effects on cancer since 2009. And then
Yeah.
that one
Yeah.
man come out public, that John D. Caro, and I think it's 2013, that it cured his incurable, he was on his deathbed, it's incurable cancer. And so that got a lot of attention and started, the studies and got more, he got funding from there on for, there was a couple that their son, I think 27 years old, died of um, cancer, and they heard about this, and so they put in money for Dr. Pandy to research, to help other people.
Oh yeah.
And so it's just been going
Wonderful.
on, but then they won't do the FDA funding. So he's really excited about talking to you and learning more about this
Yeah.
company in New
Yeah.
Mexico
Well,
because it's already being,
definitely share with them.
yeah, it's already being manufactured, and we already have,
Yeah.
case study of my husband, number 157. This people have tried it, and
Right.
so we're really excited about you two joining forces.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, like I said, this is about the betterment for the people who are suffering. Now the question I've had, and I will talk to Dr. Paney in greater detail because he's a researcher,
Hmm.
like you said, he's not a doctor, he's a research guy. And it's always great to work with folks like that because, they think a little differently, a little bit more out of the box, and they're not constrained sometimes by the medical community when it comes to oncology and quote, I hate the word alternative treatments because they're not really alternatives there. They can be adjunctive. They can be working with. And like they say, there's a lot more research. Now, the research that he was doing was mostly with colon cancer, to my understanding. And I don't know, and you're saying that he's talked about other types
Yeah.
of cancers, and
Hmm.
that's where I'm curious to see
Yeah.
the more details and more of a broader spectrum because I've studied a lot of times the biomechanisms of how cancers work, and it's very complex. And to have something as, quote, simply as a dandelion root that grows in the ground that everyone wants to get rid of, I'm thinking like, hey, why can't you just drink the dandelion root tea? Maybe the old timers drank dandelion, they always drank it in the spring as a spring tonic. Dandelion greens were always a spring tonic because after being sedentary over the winter months and you have to get ready to get going, in the springtime, you do what's called a spring cleaning, so to speak. And dandelion was always at the core of that. And so I find it fascinating that now we have another tool in our toolbox, in our botanical toolbox, that can actually help people, maybe not even just with cancer, because dandelion goes far beyond the cancer profile. So I think that it has merit in many, many ways. It's just kind of been around for so long. A lot of people know about it, but they just don't use it. And
Right.
so drinking a cup of tea is just as valuable medicine as taking a tincture or taking it encapsulated. But I like the idea of cooking it or having it processed to some degree to render out these chemical constituents. And I would put this caution out to anybody, don't dig them up. Don't dig dandelions in your yard if you've been having chemical sprays put on it because the
Right.
dandelion root will have chemicals in it. So you have to make sure that if you're gonna grow your dandelions or you're gonna dig dandelion, just make sure it's in a clean environment. That's the main thing. Okay.
My understanding is that Dr. Pandy has been working with the tea, but now since my husband used the tincture and had such a positive result when he was
Right.
terminal, that they're going
Right.
to use your product and
Yeah. Yeah.
use it
And that makes you do a
solely
comparative, right?
and come and see how it works, and does it work on these other
Yeah.
cancers, and the ones it doesn't work on, why? So now they can begin a deeper study into it, and it's already proven in Canada to be not toxic. And so they're trying to
Yeah. And it,
force the government to make the
yeah.
medical students take 1 to 2 classes in these herb remedies
Yeah.
in Canada
Yes.
because the
Yeah.
doctors
Well,
aren't being
they have a
taught.
No, they're not being taught. And this is old knowledge too. This is old knowledge and here's the beautiful thing about looking at our older heritages, that we can now use some of the scientific lens that kind of can help us to understand a little bit about the chemical constituents, the kind of things that are present within the dandelion root. But the thing that's curious is that when plants go into the body utilizes that, and everybody's body is going to be biochemically different, but what can the body do if you give it things that it needs? And if you give it to it on a daily basis, we have to figure out like, well, wait, if we know it already targets and helps liver and liver detoxification and helping to neutralize toxins and poisons, okay, and helps the body to even be able to excrete those. Yeah, it's great to know all that, but again, why wouldn't we use that as an adjunctive compound? And it's very difficult with a botanical to say, oh, it cures anything. So what we talk about is how does it improve the functionality of the body? Because diseases exist because of deficiency and deficits of the function of the body. And especially as we age, sometimes our metabolic functioning starts to diminish. And when we all really look at the model of cancer and we understand that damaged DNA ultimately is the core progenitor of cancer stem cell, then we have to sit there and look and say, okay, wait a minute. If we just improve our overall health of our body, we can prevent a lot of these disease conditions that we have acquired because of our lifestyles.
Yeah.
Make
And
sense?
he said that a woman in Ohio had contacted him right after I did, and there's just got a grant for a foundation that is going to use his studies to use the dandelion root for a prevention of cancer. And I thought, wouldn't
Well,
that be
I think
great?
that well, the thing is, it's like, it's difficult to know because cancers can live in your body. Cancer cells can exist for up to 20, 30 years before you ever have a tumor. Okay, so something triggers it to the point where it metastasizes to a tumor size. But that could be underlying and it's not so much detected. So we don't really have good ways of detecting kind of our metabolic physiology a lot of times. And so this is kind of where I think taking dandelion in a sense, like I said, some on a daily basis, it's going to have an effect on the function of the body in a positive way. And that in itself can prevent cancer, right? Because cancer cells are still your cells. They just lost their mind. They've lost their program. They don't know that they're supposed to be operating normally. So they have a different form of metabolization. So, we have what we call anaerobic metabolism, which is the use of oxygen in the way that we burn fuel and byproducts. And then we have what we call anaerobic, okay? Growing in the absence of oxygen. And cancer cells like to grow in a hypoxic or a low oxygen environment. So if we can change that environment, we actually are building in a risk reducing factor to the developments of cancers and heart diseases and sugar diabetes and all these other kinds of things. So, I think dandelion falls into a really good daily regimen that would be beneficial for a lot of people. And I think that the positive benefit is if you did develop cancer, then you could start to increase dosages to a level that, you get enough in your body, and every body is different. So, you have to kind of look at it. So I don't say that dandelion will cure everybody's cancer, but we just don't know what it can do. And you never know until you put it in the body.
Right.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Dr. Pandy, well, I call him Dr. Pandy now. He says, I'm not a doctor, but um, so I lost my train of
He's
thought.
a PhD doctor, isn't he?
Okay.
He's a
Okay.
PhD.
Yeah. So I think he's going to have other people that's used this and it worked come on my show and tell their story. And
Wonderful.
the way I understand it is that the dandelion root, when it goes in your body, it stops the pathways of the cancer when it's trying to metastasize. And so the cancer can't kill anything, so it kills itself. That's the way I understand it.
Well, Well, that's somewhat accurate, and there's a little detail here is that all cells in the body have a programmed cellular death signal. That means that in life, everything has a set time and a place, okay? So when you start to look at cellular division, every single cell in your body divides. And in that divisional process, there are checks and balances that have been innately put into our structural component in that cellular DNA that actually is part of that process. So every healthy cell has a do-die signal that at one time, when that cell gets tired and wore out and can't be reproduced any longer, it's going to die. And that's based on a genetic expression called a P53 gene. Okay. P53 is a surveillance gene, a repair gene, and a suicide gene. So that's why they call it apoptosis or apoptosis, programmed cellular death. All right. So what happens is that when cells get mutated and the repair does not happen adequately, and that cell is allowed to divide, that can set up some genetic anomalies that will alter what the P53 is about, okay? So you can call it mutant P53, you can call it wild P53, but P53 is a very important aspect in life function altogether. So if you surveillance a gene because you're going to divide and you want to make sure that in that division that both sides are going to be equal and you're going to have a complete set of division, that's what the P53 does. If it can't do that, it sends a repair order to repair the DNA. And if the DNA cannot be repaired, then it sends a suicide gene, basically a signal that says, okay, it's time for you to die. I'm not going to let you divide. It's time for you to be washed out of the body and down the road you go. Cancer cells disable the P53. So when you talk about cancer cell growth and development, cancer cells use a lot of other factors in their processing to be able to use what your body has and take it for its own growth processes. And so all I think from what my understanding is after I read the study that Dr. Pandy was authoring with some other researchers was that the way that it works is that it works in helping the P53 do its job, reactivation of P53, which means that if you have a cancer cell that is suppressing P53, it works in a way to help to get P53 reactivated so that it can determine that it's time for that cell to die. And that's how the cancer dies. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's a little complex, but it's not really that when we simplify it down, yeah, it's a complex situation. But isn't that the beauty of the intelligence of the human life form and the fact of life itself is that we have this checks and balance system. Yes, it can go vagrant, but yet we can reel it back into where we can make it sensitized so that it starts to operate the way that it's supposed to, which means cancer will die if that P53 switch is allowed to turn it off. So, hey, and that's one of the pathways that I read in that study as how dandelion, you know, has the potential to do that. And so my only question, and I will talk to Dr. Pandy in great detail, I will get hold of him. And the thing is, I'm curious because P53 is involved in all cancers. So it doesn't have to just be colon cancer. So how do we deal with that in other types of cancers? And that's where I'm curious to see how, here again, one root, chemical constituency that's in dandelion, how's it going to really help everything on everybody's level? Now, I know that in the detox scenario, it's going to be very beneficial for people on chemotherapy because it helps as an adjuvant to helping protect the liver and give the liver's ability to detoxify, out the chemo as it has to be gotten rid of because the body still has to break it down and it has to eliminate it. And, chemotherapy byproducts are toxic. And so we have to get rid of them. The human body can't survive with those toxins. So yeah, I think that it has a really good adjunctive spot in the whole profile of looking at how to bring about better physiological functioning of our whole organ systems. Anyway, that's a long answer.
Yeah. Well, it's also had good results in pancreatic cancer and leukemia
Yeah,
in his studies. And
yeah, that's what he
the
was.
thing he's run into is people are asking their oncologists if they can use this, and they're being told no. And he was very happy that when we told my husband's oncologist that he started this, that he just simply called the hospital pharmacist and he checked, and yeah, it's safe. And he said that was pretty
Yeah.
fascinating that he got
Yes.
that
Well,
support.
it is good. Well, because oncology, only knows what they know. They are trained in what they know, and I have respect for them. But the thing is, they don't get the training, but they're worried about taking something that's going to make the chemotherapy not as effective at actually killing the cancer cells. Remember, I think we talked briefly the other day about how chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery basically deal with active cancers, but they don't deal with the stem cell. They don't still deal with the progenitor of the cancer. So you can take and chemo, radiate, and take a tumor out, but if you don't change the environment that caused that tumor, then it's going to probably come back. And most chances, and I think most statistics, they say usually within a 2-year period of time, people's cancers are coming back if you do nothing. Okay, so what we will look on the premise of is how can we improve the body, again, the terrain, the environment of which what allowed cancer, how can we change that? And that's where I think dandelion could be an adjunct in even a nutritional program that would be helpful. And I like the tinctures a lot because sometimes you don't have a chance to brew a cup of tea. You got to sit around the house, or you got to
Yeah.
carry a jug with tea in it, and how much tea do you need to drink to be effective is the other question. That's why sometimes in research study, you can look at the quantity of what's needed and you can look at your test subjects and you can kind of come up with an average of, oh, this person did 3 droppers of tincture a day. This person did 6. This one did 2. And because of the variations of our individuality, we need that kind of information to be able to make better decisions about how to throw it in. To just say take it, yeah. If it were me with cancer, I would take it from
Mhm.
what I've been reading, just
Yeah.
because it makes sense. So, I'm looking at my formulas and saying, well, I'm going to really dandelion root in any of my formulas that I take, because we live in a toxic world. We live in a world where, things that we were subjected to 30, 40 years ago when we were younger and kids, we didn't know things. Now we know things more. And so if we can minimize risk, that to me makes more sense.
I believe the man that in 2013 that went on the media telling about, I think he took 25 grams of the root and boiled it, let it sit
Yeah.
20, 10
Well,
minutes,
25 grams is about
and
an
then
ounce. That's an ounce
cut
of,
that in four and had it 4 times a day. So is an
okay.
ounce.
So he was
Okay.
drinking an ounce of tea. That's 1 ounce. And he boiled it and then he divided that by 4. So he
Mhm.
drank four
Mhm.
whatever how much water he boiled. Because usually an average cup of tea is like a teaspoon for maintenance. Okay, just a beverage tea, 1 teaspoon of herb. Okay, now if you want to get into therapeutics, it's usually 2 to 3 teaspoons of herb per 8 ounces of water. All right, so if he was doing an ounce to a pint or an ounce to a quart, he would be drinking a cup would be, that'd be about the proportion would be, he would be using that ounce a day to a quart of water, and then he could divide, drink that throughout the day. That's perfectly fine, and that's good,
Mhm.
that's a good concentration.
Yeah,
And then
the
again, if you took that in tincture, you know,
yeah.
tincture wise, you would probably say, well, if I did a tincture, uh, probably a teaspoon of tincture per cup would be a rational equivalent. I'd have to do the math on paper. I don't have that right now in front of me, but that would be what I would be thinking would be that 1 teaspoon, okay, of tincture would to a cup of water would be probably equivalent to what you're saying with 4 cups to 1 ounce of root. So, yeah.
Yeah, my husband's the tincture. He uses one dropper in a cup of water 3 times a day. And then when we were at your store Tuesday, we picked up some of the bark, and I
Yes.
put
Yeah.
a tablespoon and let that sit for maybe 20 minutes or so, and then add it to his regular tea that he drinks in his jug, his 2 quart thing of tea. So half gallon. But
Perfect.
so he just, he drinks about, half a gallon of tea a day. So it's just in there. Just add a little
Good.
thing.
Well, that's good. Yeah. That makes good sense to me. And the thing is, the tinctures are great when you travel. When you can't
Mhm.
go and boil something, you know what I mean? You can't make it at home. You can't do it in your daily regimen. The tinctures come in as a real handy way. I travel with my tinctures. I have my little medicine bag in my when I travel on the airplanes and, they're all in 1 ouncer. So everything works. And it's got the label. And it's just like little medicine. I travel with my medicine because you never know when you need something. And half the time I'm sharing it with someone else who has a problem, but I don't. But, it's kind of interesting that I've learned to do that. So I travel with tincture more so than I do sometimes with pills, encapsulations as well, because you're looking for the ways that can help. At home, I love drinking things as teas and concoctions, and you can boil dandelion root and you can add it into anything. You can put it in with your cereal. You can add it into soups and stews.
Yeah.
So
Has a little bit of
yeah,
musty smell, a little bit of musty taste, but hardly. really.
Yeah, and here's the thing, if you've got dandelion growing on your properties, dig it up. Dig it up. You know, you can dig it up while it's fresh. You have to cut it so that when it dries and you can make your own. And that's the beauty of herbal medicine. You know, many, many years ago, I got so frustrated with the FDA because they were trying to restrict things like garlic, you know, and they were talking this talk about, oh, shouldn't have access to ginger root and things that are common herbs and plants. And I'm going, what are they talking about? I said, well, if that's going to come down, then I'm just going to grow it on my property and I'll just go out and get it when I want it, you know,
Yeah.
because if you learn how to make your medicine, which is the tradition. It's the people's medicine. Herbs are the people's medicine, and we just have to start to learn how to use them. And I'm just happy that you guys, you know, were able to get results. You know, when we sat in my office the other day and we had a detailed conversation. And I commend you for the work you're trying to do to spread the word out and get things where people can start to. And it's a message that I've been doing for 50 years. I've been spreading that message for a long time. You know, take care of yourself. We expect
Well,
other people to take care of us, and
my
you know,
understanding from Dr. Pandy on the interview yesterday is they've known about this since 1950 and just wouldn't let it
yeah,
go anywhere.
1950,
50. 1950. You think of all the people
1950.
that have died and suffered of cancer, especially little children and, young parents that got
Oh,
kids to raise. It's just heartbreaking.
well, that is heartbreaking. I'm I'm gonna do a little quick deep dive. This is a book with my early teachers, Dr. John Christopher. Okay, it's called School of Natural Healing. I'm gonna look up dandelion root real quick
Okay.
while we're talking. Okay, I
Okay.
just want to see what he has to say. Because this book goes way back. The information is timeless. Let me get into the herb section here. Find the right page. And we can share this information because this is where I learned it.
And
You
while
know what I
you're
mean?
Yeah, while you're looking for that, I just want to say for people who didn't watch the interview I did with my husband, he started the dandelion root tincture from your store at July 19, and he
Okay.
had cancer, stage 4. He rang the bell 2 months later, had a bowel obstruction, and they found peritoneal cancer and small intestine cancer, which they say is both very aggressive and both incurable. And he started back on chemo, and his numbers just going up, and they gave no hope. Any alternative medicine they gave was some people choose to do nothing. And so when I learned about this tincture, he started on it July 19th. 2 days after he started, his CEAs went from 14 to 2. 2 weeks later, his CT scan showed everything either shrunk or disappeared. 2 months later, there's nothing detectable. And so that's
I'll
why
be
I'm
darned.
not going to stop till the whole world knows, because I want other people to have the chance. I mean, maybe it won't work for everybody, but it's got to work for somebody else. It'll work for my husband, and he's number 157 in Dr. Pandy's study. So, Dr. Pandy
Yes.
said we need
Yeah.
this to go from 157 to 157,000.
Yes. 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 We need a lot more people using this. All right. Yeah, I'm gonna go to another book. So I couldn't find it real quick there. There's another book I used called Planetary Herbalism.
Okay.
And this was one of my teachers, okay, for a very long time. His name was Dr. Michael Thierra. And 93, 194. Let's just see it. Just to give you guys an understanding, it talks about dandelion root. It is bitter, sweet, and cooling. It affects the spleen, stomach, kidney, liver. It is a blood purifier. It says its is for all heated liver conditions, breast tumors, abscesses, boils, fluid retention, stomach disorders, constipation. One of the best remedies for the treatment of hepatitis and possible preventative for breast cancer. Now, this book was written back in the 80s. Now, I
Hepatitis.
have more
Wow.
details. I've
Or
got a whole library full. Yeah,
and that was written in the 80s, you say.
yeah, yeah. So these are things that I've got so many other references I could look, and I'm going to do a little digging into it a little bit more because I just read the one study by Dr. Pandy, but I want to go in beyond that and look at some of my other tech stuff because I like to understand the constituency and kind of maybe how they might work in the physiological body. But it's just as simple as a root. Eat this root. It's going to help you stay healthy. And I think that's an important message that we take. And there's so many herbs, there's so many botanicals that have benefit to the human body. And yet they have been poo-pooed. We were ostracized by the conventional medical system, which is an allopathic medicine system. There used to be a group of eclectic physicians that practiced from about 1840s to about 1930. It was called they were called eclectics. They did not use they did use toxic herbs, but in very minute doses. But they didn't use the conventional allopathic treatments of bloodletting and things of that nature. They were truly plant doctors, and they were based in the United States, very strong body. Matter of fact, Cincinnati, Ohio houses the last repository, and there's a library there called the Lloyd Library, which is the largest repository of botanical information in the world.
Wow. Well, maybe
And
that's where
a
they should
lot of
get
the
the
pharmacists,
information for these college students that are going to be forced to take these classes.
well, they already do. The pharmacy students actually go to that library because it has the repository of all the work. And they have the work of it was developed by the eclectic physicians, a man by the name of John Uri Lloyd. There were three brothers. They had a company in Cincinnati that was the production company for the eclectic physicians so that they could get the raw material in the liquid tinctures. Okay. So John Uri Lloyd was a scientist, and he developed techniques for botanical extraction that are still used today. Okay. And they were able to pull the medicines out of the plants in methodologies in different ways that help to render the basis of the plant. It's not a single drug. Okay. It's bringing all of the whole plant into a liquid. Okay. And then just leaving the fiber and the woody materials behind. So it's pretty fascinating. If a person's really interested, you can go and look up, it's called the Eclectic Physicians of the United States. And they were basically ostracized by the American Medical Association.
So what I'm hearing
And they
is
went out of
that pharmaceutical students take these classes, but oncologists don't.
business. You got it exactly correct.
So
Yes,
we
yes,
need
yes.
to bridge the gap there because when
Well, and that, and
when they told me there
yeah.
was no hope for my husband, you know, well, actually, when he first got diagnosed, I said, I see all this stuff online, and I'm not going down all these rabbit holes. So, what is it that he can take? A herb, a diet, a food, anything? I said, anything he can take that would help this? And they said, no.
Oh, because they don't know it. They just don't
Right,
know it.
right.
Here the thing is their hands are tied. You got to remember that the oncologist doctor is I considered doctors like farmers. They're caught in the middle. You're caught between government bureaucracy and you're caught between the money machines. Okay. All
Hmm.
right. So when you look at big pharma and big ag, they're the same people. All right.
Hmm.
Same people. They go in and out of the FDA all the time. So we have a system that is being controlled. We as individuals have to empower ourselves to go out and find the information for ourselves. And I do think that that's a good thing to do. I mean, herbs are pretty much safe depending upon, but I tell everybody, get a good herb book. Get a medicinal herb book that you can start to study and learn. And I'll show you one that I like. Now this is called The Way of Herbs. Okay. The Way of Herbs by Michael Tierra, my teacher. The other book was his Planetary Herbalism. This book deals with about 100 plants. And in those plants, it's going to give you understandings about the herb we're talking about. Now, he's got a whole little chapter here on dandelion root in the way of herbs. He says it affects liver, spleen, stomach, kidney, and bladder. Talks about some of the constituents that are in it, the chemistry of it. He said the main benefit of this great herbs are exerted upon the function of the liver. Dandelion has the capacity to clear obstruction, stimulate and aid the liver to eliminate toxins from the blood. The root is also useful for clearing obstructions of the spleen, pancreas, gallbladder, and bladder and kidney. Tremendous benefit to stomach and intestine. And so that goes on. He's got a whole page just on dandelion. And he talks about the cultural uses of it, which means that people have been using this plant for a long, long time. We just have not been up, we didn't, it didn't get passed on, and this is, he says, I consider dandelion root to be specific for hypoglycemia, can be used with other tonic herbs. A cup of dandelion tea is taken 3 times a day. Helps decrease high blood pressure, aiding in action on the heart. It's one of the finest diuretics known, particularly the leaf. And so, you know,
And you don't need a
folks,
prescription.
don't need a prescription and you can get it right out of your yard, but get something like this because this will educate and you can start. That's kind of how I started. I started when I was 18. Okay, I'm 72 in about another couple of weeks. And I've been doing this my whole life. And it's just common for me to do this. I don't think out of I just migrate to this, and I always have. My mother lived to be 99 and a half and was on no pharmaceutical medications her whole life. Now that tells you something. When you eat real food and use plants, because plants, we share 15 to 18% DNA with the plant kingdom. And we share 55% DNA with the mushroom fungi family. So when we start to talk about medicinal mushrooms and immune health, we share such a commonality that our body recognizes those structures and says, oh, I know what to do with this.
That's
But
fascinating.
when you take something, yeah, when you take something that's plastic or a chemical artificial colorant or a preservative, or you start to take these things that are so much in our food chain these days, the body looks at that and it has to tear it all apart. Well, that puts a lot of stress on the system to do that. And those metabolic byproducts are what damage cells that could be potentially becoming cancer. So, we have to look at this a little broader, and say, wait a minute. So I always talk to people, every cancer patient I've ever worked with, I always talk about the importance of clean food that's not ultra processed. Know where your food comes from. That means if you eat eggs, know where those chickens are. Learn a little bit more about the sourcing of where your food's coming from. Just because it says organic on a label and it's an organic Oreo cookie, that doesn't
Right.
necessarily mean it's a healthy food. And that's the biggest thing that I've been preaching for many, many, many years is to try to say, hey, your health is in your hands and it's what you decide to put in your body. Nobody can do anything about that, and nobody can tell you you can't do it.
We're
So,
seeing this
you're
stuff.
in
Yeah.
control.
We're seeing this stuff all over the internet, how cancer feeds on sugar. Well, but we're not seeing anything about the
Yeah.
dandelion root and how it helps. It's like it's selective
No.
information, and Big Pharma is not going to be happy with this because you don't need a prescription. It could potentially put people out of business. I mean, I'm really excited
Well,
about getting this out to people that are,
yes.
have no other hope right now. They need to know this. They're not going
Well,
to get a book. And when you're like me and my husband, he's got cancer, and I'm filled with all this worry, you're not going to get out all these herb books and do research. I mean, you just need something
that's all
handed
you
to
need to do.
you and try
That's
this. It's safe. It can't hurt.
right. Exactly. Exactly. And I think you're 100% correct. That's why there's a whole myriad of plants that are now showing to have many anti-cancer properties. Curcumin, turmeric, okay? We talk about grapeseed. Grapeseed extract has some wonderful benefit. There's an herb called frankincense, Boswellia, very specific in how it regulates the inflammatory processes, particularly those that are driven up by cancer. So when we start to understand that there's so many things at our fingertips that yes we can take that are safe, that are prepared the right way. There's a lot of garbage on the internet. There's a lot of people trying to make money off of whatever they can make
Yep.
money off of. So I only urge the listener to say, do your homework,
Right.
find the brands you trust, don't read the marketing that sensationalizes it because it's somebody just trying to make a buck most of the
Right.
time.
Everything
And
I
I
hear
don't
cures
like that.
cancer. How do you know? How does an
Yeah,
average person
eh,
sort that out? And that's why I never went and looked through much because people were sending me all this stuff. My husband got diagnosed. I'm not going out down all those rabbit holes. My husband has the best top doctors.
yeah,
They're like number 5 hospital in the world. And I'm not doing it because they told me none of this stuff works. And then when I finally, and I had no hope, and then finally when I got hope and I just happened to come across this and I just knew, like I knew in my heart
Yeah.
somehow, I felt like it was God speaking to me. And I said, Jim, I looked at this and I did a little research and he grabbed his phone and he called your office to see if they have it. And we got our shoes on, got in the car and went to Parkersburg. So we're so happy we did. We're so happy for your store. I hope this becomes big and it's a nice present for your 50th anniversary for your
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Peggy. I really appreciate you too. And the thing is, it really isn't about the money for me. It's really about these kinds of stories, the things that you've expressed and told me. It solidifies the reasons why we started and are doing this. And the money's not the reason.
Mm-mm.
But the money comes, and if we can take that and keep moving it into helping things be better, that's kind of how we like to look. That's how I've trained my staff, and that's why I think we've been here for 50 years, is because we truly do care about people's health. And yes, we're in a business, we have to run a business, but we can run a business, and do the right thing. It's not just about here, sell this because, oh, somebody's. And so I will definitely be incorporating it in more of my cancer consults. And as I keep doing more further research with it, I'm pretty much just going to probably become one of our core protocols that we maybe start to introduce this in. And again, I like drinking tea. I think that the tea is great because that's flushing the water. It's flushing the toxins. It's doing a lot. And if we don't, most Americans don't get enough water, even. But here you got water with some dandelion root. So you're doing a great job, and I want to commend you for doing that. And let's just keep working this together. And I'll be happy to share and anything I can do, and even to the viewership and the listenership that sees what's going on here. We'll definitely do it. I will get hold of Dr. Pandy probably later today and just at least get an initial conversation. I did reach out to Dr. Ajay Goyal and I did get a response. I sent him Dr. Pandy's research.
Okay. Now
And
what
so
is he?
he's a gentleman who works for City of Hope. He's the PhD researcher at City of Hope that has been done all the research on turmeric and
Okay.
curcumin. And because he's centered more on gastrointestinal, which would be colon, pancreatic, gallbladder, these types of cancers. He said he would look into that, and I'm sure I will hear a response back. And maybe I can get those two communicating, and maybe something can come from that. We just don't know. It's all about relationship. And what you've
Mhm.
helped to do is open up some doors to maybe help to develop this into a much broader conversation. And, as more of us learn to use these kinds of tools, hey, we can better humankind.
Yeah,
So,
like I say, I drowned when I was 5 years old, Marietta, Ohio. It's called Catfish Paradise now. And right after that, I had an experience with this communication with a wildflower that I've been talking about for a long time. And I made a poem about it, put it in my book. And I know people roll their eyes and think, God, is she weird? But I was 5 years old. And in that communication, I was told by this wildflower, which I believe was the angel that continued talking to me during my drowning, and it was said that this wildflower had a strength inside of it that helped it to grow. And if I listened quietly, listen quietly, that I would learn about this. And then I saw that picture of that, I don't know, it was an ad, but it was a post that said dandelion root kills colon cancer by 95% in 48 hours. And I've seen all this claims and nothing struck with me,
yeah,
but I looked at
yeah,
that and I looked at that picture of that dandelion and it just reminded me of this flower communication. I was 5 years old. And I just thought to myself, if
yeah,
this isn't God speaking to me, then he never did. Like I felt in my heart
exactly.
so strongly. And then now that my husband's cured, we're just like, this is beyond our comprehension. I'm like, maybe we can take the medical science and the science that you do with the herbs and my will of a wildflower,
Exactly.
I'll never quit, I will be screaming, I'll be in their
Oh, I
face,
can
I
see the
won't stop.
tenacity. I see that tenacity. I do see that tenacity. And I saw Jim sitting there. I'm sure he knows it very well.
Yeah, he does. He sat there and he went shh to me, like shh, like give him a chance to talk because I get really wound up. And so I'm really excited about this coming out in the news soon. And
Okay.
we've just been waiting for the journalist to come back. She was on her honeymoon for 2 weeks. She's like, I'm gonna do this when we get back. And then she came back with a bad cold, so she's off this week. So
I'll
it's
I
give
can
me a
help her with
chance though. Yeah,
that.
it's give me a chance to interview Dr. Pandy and get that published, interview you, get it published, get you guys together. So it's giving us a little time because she'll be able to take statements off these interviews for her article.
Yeah.
And I just hope
Okay,
that
good.
it hits the media like wildfire. And like, I'm not in
Right.
to make money. It's like my husband's life was saved. I want everybody's life to be saved. Give it a chance. It's got to help somebody else besides him. And we just got to
Right.
get the word out and then get people thinking more about herbs and what the healing. And because I
Yeah.
understand that I've heard one place 50%, another place 70%, that the cancer medicines come from plants, 50 to 70% come from
They,
plants.
they some are derived still from plants, but what they found is they take them and they look for the constituents, and then they can put them into a trial to try to make a drug. So that's what happens. Is yes, they discovered, and many years ago I was a keynote speaker for the Pharmacy Association in West Virginia, and I talked about plants. Okay, I talked about the top 20 plants that used to be in their medicine sheet in their realm that they no longer promoted, but I talked to them about the chemistries and how and different things. And it's the fact that it just got so far away from the actual plants because of money, basically how to synthesize this, how to do that. And I think that the real benefit is that people can use real food, real plants, and get well and get better. And it's everybody's unique. And it's just I've watched so many people's journeys over the course of the many consults I've done. And the people who choose to really make the commitment to making a lifestyle modification change are the ones that see the results. And everybody's results will be unique to them. And so you don't get anywhere if you don't try it. You got to at least put it in the body. The body, I always tell people, they'll come in there, say, they bring me all their bottles, and I say, well, okay. And I said, are you taking all this? Well, some of this. I said, well, they don't work in the bottle. You got to put them in your body.
Yeah. My doctor
You know,
prescribes me stuff and I take a little bit. Nah, it is in the
a
drawer.
little bit of it, but I said, well, they don't do anything. It's sitting in the jar. So, well,
Yeah.
I
And I
appreciate
understand, I think from Dr. Pandy that this has to work at least 30% of the time
it.
before they can say, this could work. And
Probably why his trial is looking for people where they
more
can actually
people.
track the results, to a little different degree.
And when I've,
Because
go ahead.
my study, they were doing the mice studies in the report. They were interjecting tumors, colon tumors of a certain cell line, and then they were using the dandelion in the mice studies. They want to extrapolate that to human study, and there's ethics involved, but there's a whole lot of planning and thoughtfulness that has to go into it. I think he speaks of that in his interview about the difficulty of finding the right measurements, the right people to be able to actually do something that will have any relevance in the quote medical community. They want things at a certain level.
Yeah.
And that's what the difficulty becomes. And that's always the roadblocks to so many of these compounds that could be being used and could be being studied more intently. You'd almost have to go outside of the United States to be able to find research openness to change. You know what I
Well, the
mean?
stipulation for the human trials was that they had to be stage 4 terminal and be healthy. And he's like, how many people stage 4 are healthy?
They're not normally very healthy.
So they
Okay.
didn't find
So,
very many.
yeah, that's not going to work. And so you want them to not be healthy because what you're really trying to, not really, I don't mean it that way, but you want it to be what it is. Because if you are in reality and this is where you are and you take something that could potentially help you, the only way you're going to know the result is to see that a person gets better. So if a person's got stage 4 and they're healthy, they consider them to be healthy. How do you notice? How do you see anything? So I don't know. I don't know again, these are all semantics of ways that can put roadblocks into research. You know,
Mhm.
has
And
to
I
fit certain,
and I
it's
believe
not about,
Dr. Pandy said that some oncologists said that if they were stage 4, they wouldn't do chemo. They wouldn't do anything because of quality of life, and the chemo would take their quality of life. And
exactly.
so I guess that's why, my husband's doctors was saying some people choose to do nothing. It was kind of like Kent, if it was us, we wouldn't do anything, of course, because they're not allowed to say that. But and then I find this and it works, and I just think of where we would be right now if we
Well,
hadn't found this.
I've worked with individuals who have had cancer in their body for years, but it's not growing. It's not active. It's just sitting there because of what they did in their lifestyle modification and the protocols that we developed. We've watched cancers go into remission, stop growing, period, some going totally away. And so I always tell people, I said, you can be living with cancer. You don't have to be dying of cancer, but we have to support the rest of the body. You have to support the rest of the body. Okay, and in cancer, we have to make sure the liver is healthy, and you have to make sure that you're detoxing properly. You have to have a strong immune system, and you have to bathe and feed your body with nutrition from real food. And that's the biggest kicker. And if we can do that, human bodies have again, remember the P53. That's part of the repair. Healing happens not because somebody tells you to do that. It happens because the body responds when it's given the proper environment. And again, cancer is very opportunistic. In some cancers, sometimes the damage is so greatly done that it's very difficult to be able to. But if you can still improve quality of life in those situations, that's more important than quantity of life. If you have quantity of life and you're laying in bed sick and puking all day long, you can't have quality of life. So if you have cancer and you are, stable, or if you can have the life until it's our time. We have a time. So we don't know when it's going to be. And it's all about human suffering, when it comes down to it. I've watched some people suffer myself, and it's a shame to see that happen in the event of trying to help a person get over something that is, and cancer is serious. But why is it that 1 in 3 people now in the world are susceptible to cancer? And that's the thing when you start to look at statistics, you go like, my goodness gracious, 1 in 2 will have a heart attack, and it's like these are things that are acquired conditions as far as I'm concerned. There are genetics. Most of the training and most of the people who talk when I've studied, they say that in cancer and in disease, they say 30% is genetic, 70% is environmental or what you've done in your lifestyle. Okay. So you can have a gene or a genetic predisposition because of familiar things. But so if that's only 30%, 70% is far greater than 30. So why don't we work on the 70? And hopefully that genetic expression of the 30 doesn't get turned on and off. Science didn't used to think that you could turn genes on and off. Well, now they know that certain factors turn them on and turn them off. Okay, so if we don't turn the genes on that promote these disease processes, haven't we strengthened our body and haven't we reduced risk? I mean, and that's the things like eating real food, tomatoes and zucchinis. And when I look at a plate of food, I want to see color. I
Yeah.
want color. I want purple. I want red. I want yellow. I want green, you know? So white. So when I look at my plate and my foods, and my regimen, when we eat food, I'm always looking at the colors too to say, okay, I'm getting a variety of plant-based components that are going to support what my body says. Now, Dr. Jim Duku is an ethnobotanist for the USDA, but he was actually he was a very smart man. He said that your body will always take what it needs and will discard the rest. So when you think about the way we live and the way we eat and consume food and herbs, as you put it into your body says, well, I don't know when I'm going to need this, but if it's there, it will take it. But if it's not there and if it's deficient, it can't work as well in deficiency. So a lot of times our disease processes are based in this deficiency of the right things and an excess of the wrong things. And it's just an interesting concept when you go to start to mold your lifestyle. And no matter what age we are, we can always make positive change.
And then you have the little kids with cancer. My husband's brother died at 5 years old of leukemia back in the 60s. And it's like, why?
Yeah.
Why are these little ones?
Well, again, blood cancers a lot of times are tied back to a lot of times environmental toxins and pollutants that we come into contact with that we don't know that we're in contact with. There's a lot of things that go on around us that we just don't know. And so it always comes down to the damage done and how well can we do, how can we minimize damage, and that's really the key here is, how can we do that? And I believe that body systems have an intelligence sometimes beyond what our mind wants to think. I think there's an innate intelligence about life that we are not necessarily in tune with. And when you talk about being in tune with a flower, at 5 years old, you know, plants don't have legs, they can't walk, but they can certainly talk. And there is a study called biophilia is the name of it, and it is actually introducing plants to people that are sick and having a relationship with a plant that actually has a healing power that is not really measurable in some of our classical standards of measurement. Okay. So I think there's more to plants than what we give them credit. And I
Yeah.
do believe that they are trying to communicate with us, but not everybody has the ability to understand that. And I can tell you when I walk in the woods on our property and I go down to where I know my medicinals are, and I can go and just hang out down there, I can tell you there's a peace that comes over
Hmm.
me that I feel like all the garbage that you're thinking about in your head, all the stuff that you kind of worry about, it just kind of falls away.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're just being present in that presence. Maybe there's something deeper going on there that we need to think about. And I always urge people to go outside, do something. Don't have to go hiking. You could go sit on a log, it's just fine. It's good therapy.
Yeah.
So,
My
you
thing
know,
is when I see sunlight shining through leaves, like you're under the leaves and this seeing the green and the light shining through the leaves, it's just like a tranquilizer for me. It's like, ah, like peace, harmony, there it is. Nothing else matters.
exactly. And we do need that in our life as a balance, really, to be honest with you. However, a person finds it, wherever they can find it, I think that balances out our frenetic society today. And if we don't have those kinds of things, but think about that from a health perspective, that's just balancing out some chemistry in your body just from the fact of being able to settle down. All of a sudden, that just shifts a whole lot of things that are going on, and it brings joy. So if you can bring joy in someone's life, I think that's a very good accomplishment. So
Yes.
I
Yeah. Well, you certainly
appreciate the
have
joy
brought
you've brought me. Thank
you
you.
have brought joy to our life. You and Dr. Pandy, from him doing the research and you making the dandelion root tincture, and for God to helping me since it when
Yeah.
I saw that. And I just hope this gets out to the world where maybe cancer will be a thing of the past. I
Boy, it
really
sure
am
would be.
hopeful.
I think so too. Well, you keep working on your mission. I'll keep working on mine, and I
Okay.
know that we're aligned in that mission. So
Yes.
I appreciate you very much. It's about time for me to go, but
Okay. Thank
I
you.
thank you for doing what you're doing, and I'll look forward to seeing you guys soon. Okay.
Okay. Keep in
All
touch.
right.
We'll keep in
Need anything
touch.
else?
Me, you, and Dr. Bandy. Okay.
All right. Blessings.
Bye-bye.